Hi, welcome back to VQ Book 1. We are on Lesson 13. Adversary. Defeat the adversary. Your adversary is your opponent, your enemy, or your foe. Anybody that you are fighting against or playing a game against, anybody who rivals you is your adversary. Ad here is the prefix meaning to or toward, and vert and verse is to turn. So adverse means something is turned towards you, and so we have an adversary, the person who is facing you and turned towards you, any opponent. So we can compare words like adverse. Adverse is something that is facing you, so it is against you. Or if you are averse to something, we talked about strong aversion to snakes. I'm not sure if we did that yet. And that root there is also vert, that means to turn away. Bequeath. Bequeath the family fortune. To bequeath is to leave your fortune, all your money, through a will, a document, a legal document that says someone is going to receive all the money. So this is the case of a rich grandfather, a rich great uncle dying and leaving his money for his grandchildren, his nephews, or someone, and that's leaving to someone by a will, and that's called bequeathing the money. And so we might say a ring was bequeathed, a ring bequeathed to her by her grandmother. It could be a thing like a ring. Or we can say he bequeathed his painting to the museum. He gave it through a will. All right, so we have a strange picture here, image here. This is what I think of when we say bequeath the family fortune. This is an episode of Twilight Zone, a very famous TV series back from, I don't know, like 1950s or so, when it was only black and white back then. So very long ago, but still very famous. A lot of people know the Twilight Zone. If you haven't seen any, you might look some up and watch some of it. In this particular episode, which I saw as a child in reruns, still, left a big impression on me. It was about these family members who came to a dying old man's home on his deathbed, and they were being sycophantic, kissing up to him in order to get a big portion of the money that he was going to bequeath. And so he told them, if you want any of my money, you wear these masks until I die. And so they all put on these grotesque masks. And after the old man finally died, they took off their mask, and it turned out that their face itself had distorted into the shape of the mask. So their faces were all twisted and turned into this grotesque image. It was kind of the old man's revenge against his very selfish and mercenary relatives who only wanted his money. So that's the situation of bequeathing the family fortune. Deplore. I deplore laziness. It's a way of just expressing that you don't like something. So this is something that a teacher might say. A teacher says, "I really deplore the laziness in you children." And that means the teacher disapproves of it, thinks it's a bad thing. And this word became kind of more popular in common usage because presidential candidate Clinton used it during the election campaign, and she called half of the Trump supporters the deplorables. People who are not likable and kind of disgusting is what she meant, except that the deplorables, Trump supporters, kind of embraced this term, and they started saying, well, I am a deplorable and I love being one of the deplorables. Emaciated. Emaciated children in Africa. When you think of Africa and children, I don't know if you have the same impression, but I always grew up watching these children, starving children, and late night commercials about how I should donate money to save these children. And we still get a lot of that when you watch TV. Late at night, they'll have those commercials and they show images of very thin, bony kids with bloated stomachs, right? So anyway, the being that way, being bony and thin is what emaciated means. Thin and wasted. Not just being skinny because you went on a diet, then you wouldn't really be emaciated. If you had like anorexia and you went too thin and all your bones are showing, then you would be emaciated. So in the diagram here, it's probably no one, no size there is considered really emaciated. But if we take the thinnest image there and maybe lost another 20, 30 pounds from there, that would look very emaciated. So basically, it is being very thin from starvation or illness. Furtive, furtive glances. This is being stealthy and sneaky, which means that you're like a thief and you don't want to be seen. And so a synonym for this is surreptitious, which we saw in lesson 8. Do you remember the phrase? Yes, surreptitious peek, right? And that's the same idea with furtive glances, isn't it? It's about looking at something very quickly, thief-like, so you don't want, no one will see you. Like a kid cheating in class and doesn't want the teacher to see him taking a peek, so he'll be very surreptitious about it, or he'll be furtive about it. And the thing about the word furtive is that it's often associated with being like a thief. So we would talk about furtive movements. He moved through the shadows furtively, things like that. Indolent, indolent couch potato. Indolent simply means lazy. So just use it as an adjective for lazy. There's some variations of it, some from the dictionary. Let's take a look. A says averse to activity, effort, or movement, like being habitually lazy. So a couch potato is someone who lazes around the sofa and watches TV, someone like what you see in the picture, and that's a couch potato, and that's the definition we have in A. In B, we see conducive to or encouraging laziness. So the heat, indolent heat, summer heat can be indolent because it causes laziness in us. Or C, showing an inclination to laziness. You are likely to be lazy, or you are you tend to be lazy all the time, as in an indolent sigh. You let out a sigh that signifies that you're just kind of lazy and don't want to do anything. Miserly, miserly old man. When we think of miserly, well, the definition is stingy and mean in the sense that you're saving money and you're also mean about it. And that's what miserly is. And that idea, I think, is exemplified by none other than Ebenezer Scrooge in Christmas Carol, right? So it's the person, Ebenezer Scrooge, is called a miser. He's a miser. He's an old miser. And it is usually a mean character and also very stingy with money. Those kind of two characters go together when we say miserly old man. Preclude. Preclude the possibility. To preclude something is to make impossible or to eliminate, but it implies that you make it impossible before it happens. You're shutting out the possibility before it happens, like cavity prevention, right? You have to prevent it ahead of time. You can't wait until your teeth starts rotting. Pre here is before, and clude and cluse means to shut. So the put together, the word really means to shut out something, the possibility, before it happens. So it is preventing something. And we might compare the words inclusive and exclusive, which we've seen earlier, and that means to shut in or shut out, right? And that cluse is another root that you will see often in other words. Respite. No time for respite. This is an interval of relief or time of rest. Basically just a break time, like a recess in school, is a time of respite. Now, the thing to point out here is that the word is pronounced respite, not respite. It looks like it should be respite, and people who are not familiar with the word, when they see it, they will say respite because that's the normal way of reading English words. But if you are familiar with the word, you would not do that. You would say respite. No time for respite. Taint. Tainted food. To taint something is to contaminate it or to cause it to lose purity. So it becomes dirty in some way. So usually food that maybe has been sitting around and it becomes spoiled, you might say is tainted. If it comes in contact with something dirty, you might say it's tainted. You can talk about also tainted reputation, that someone's reputation has been dirtied or sullied somehow. And there was a famous song back in the 80s or so called Tainted Love. And there's been, I think, several different versions of that. If you're interested, you might look it up on YouTube and listen to it. It's a very good song. I'm not really sure what it means, tainted love, but somehow that love has been dirtied or contaminated somewhat, is what I guess it means. Thanks for watching. That was lesson 13. I'll see you back for the next lesson.